My sister pushed me down the stairs while pregnant. My parents defended her and threatened me, but I pressed charges anyway. And now that my miracle baby is born, I banned them from meeting him forever. I'm 28 years old. I work in human resources administration, and it's been 5 months since I've spoken to my parents or my younger sister because, basically, she tried to kill me and my baby by pushing me down a flight of stairs, and my parents decided that was okay. I mean, they defended her instead of me. It sounds like something out of a soap opera. I know. But I swear all of this really happened. And there are still days when I wake up and can't believe my own family chose this path. I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand all the context. My husband, Jonathan, and I had been trying to have a baby for like 2 years, and it's not that nothing was happening. It's that horrible things were happening. I had 2 miscarriages in those 2 years. The first one was at 7 weeks and the second at 10, and each of those moments destroyed me in ways I can't even explain properly. When you lose a pregnancy, people tell you things like, there will be more opportunities, or everything happens for a reason, but nobody prepares you for that moment when you're in the bathroom crying because your body simply decided no, this baby isn't going to exist. Jonathan was incredible through all of that. Honestly, he held me every time I broke down, took me to all the doctors I had to see, never made me feel like it was my fault, even though I secretly felt like maybe it was, like my body was broken or something. So then I got pregnant again in March of this year. I mean, like 9 months ago approximately. When I saw the positive test, I literally stood frozen in the bathroom for I don't know how long, like 10 minutes maybe, just staring at those 2 pink lines and thinking, okay, but how long is this going to last? I didn't feel immediate joy, which is what you're supposed to feel, right? I felt pure terror. I showed Jonathan the test and he was happy but also scared. I could see it in his eyes. We were both so afraid of losing another baby that we basically decided not to tell anyone, absolutely anyone, until we were sure everything was going okay. My family is complicated. My parents, who are like 55 and 57 years old respectively, have always been those kind of people who care a lot about appearances and what others think. We live in a relatively small town where everyone knows everyone, so they've always been very concerned with maintaining a certain image. You know what I mean? And my sister, Kimberly, who's 4 years younger than me, so she's 24, has always been like the apple of their eye, the one who can do whatever she wants and never receives real consequences. It's not that I was mistreated or anything dramatic like that, but there was obvious favoritism. Like when she failed a test, it was, oh, poor thing. She was stressed. But when I got a 9 instead of a 10, it was, what happened? Why didn't you try harder? During my 2 previous miscarriages, my parents were, they weren't exactly the support I needed. When I lost the first one, my mom said something like, it's normal. Many women lose the first one, and basically minimized all the pain I was feeling. Kimberly didn't even call me. I think she sent me a text message that said something like, sorry about that, and that was it. With the second miscarriage, it was worse because I was already 10 weeks along. I had already heard the heartbeat. I had already gotten my hopes up thinking maybe this time it would work. And when I lost it, my dad told me, maybe it's a sign you should wait a little longer. As if it were my fault. Or as if we hadn't been trying hard enough. Jonathan got so angry at that comment, he almost got into a fight with my dad. I had to calm him down because I didn't want more family drama at such a horrible time. So, yeah. When I got pregnant this 3rd time, we decided to keep it completely secret. We didn't tell my parents, my in-laws, anyone. I went to all my medical appointments, saw the heartbeat at 6 weeks and then at 8 and then at 10, and every time another week passed without anything bad happening, it was like a small miracle. We reached 12 weeks and the doctor did my first trimester ultrasound, and everything looked perfect. The baby was growing well, all the markers looked normal, and I started thinking, okay, maybe this time it will work. Maybe I'm going to actually become a mom. But even then, we didn't tell anyone because I still had that fear in the back of my mind. That thought of, at any moment something could go wrong. Things kept progressing well. I reached 16 weeks and then 18, and I already had a little belly that was hard to hide, but that I could still disguise with loose clothing. Jonathan and I had talked about maybe at 20 weeks, when we had the anatomy ultrasound and knew the baby's sex. Maybe then we'd tell our families. We wanted to wait until we were as sure as possible that everything was going to be okay. But then the thing with Kimberly's party happened, and literally everything went to hell. Turns out my sister had gotten a promotion at her job. She works in marketing for a tech company, I think. It wasn't a big deal, really. Like she went from coordinator to junior manager or something. But she was super excited and organized this giant party at her house to celebrate it. She invited the whole family, friends, coworkers, basically half the world. I didn't want to go, honestly, because I was already almost 19 weeks and my belly was getting harder and harder to hide. But my parents insisted so much that I felt like I couldn't say no without raising suspicions. Jonathan told me we didn't have to go if I didn't want to, but I thought, it's just a party for a few hours. I can wear loose clothes. Nobody's going to notice anything. Big mistake. A huge mistake on my part to think I could go unnoticed at that party. We arrived at Kimberly's house. She lives in a nice apartment on the north side of the city. My parents obviously helped her with the down payment, and there were like 50 people there, loud music, food everywhere, the typical celebration party. Kimberly was in her element, all dressed up, telling everyone about her promotion, showing off her new business card like it was an Oscar or something. I stayed in a corner with Jonathan, eating snacks and trying not to draw attention. I was wearing this loose tunic-style blouse I had bought specifically for events like this. Everything was going relatively well until my Aunt Evelyn, who's my mom's sister, and who's always been one of those people who can't keep their mouth shut about anything, came up to me and gave me a hug. And when she hugged me, I guess she felt my belly or something because she pulled back a bit, looked me up and down with those wide eyes she makes when she discovers something, and said loudly, "Oh my God, Heather, are you pregnant?" And she said it loud enough that several people around us turned to look. I froze, literally didn't know what to say. I had my mouth open like a fish out of water, and Jonathan immediately put his arm around me in protective mode, but it was already too late. My aunt, without waiting for my answer or anything, shouted across the entire room, "Heather's pregnant! She's having a baby!" And suddenly all the attention at the party turned to me. People started clapping. Some came up to congratulate me. My mom ran toward me with a completely surprised face, and I just wanted the earth to swallow me whole. I could see Kimberly on the other side of the room, and her face went from confusion to what I can only describe as pure fury in a matter of seconds. The music kept playing, but nobody was paying attention anymore. Everyone was focused on me and my secret pregnancy that wasn't so secret anymore. My mom was asking me, "Why didn't you tell us?" And, "How far along are you?" And my dad also came over and gave me a kind of awkward hug, and I was trying to explain that we wanted to wait, that we'd had 2 previous miscarriages and were being cautious. But my voice could barely be heard over all the noise and congratulations from people. Jonathan was trying to create a bit of space around me because honestly, I was starting to feel overwhelmed, like my heart was beating super fast, and I was starting to sweat and I just wanted to get out of there. And then Kimberly appeared out of nowhere, pushed her way through the crowd until she was right in front of me, and said to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Wow. What a surprise, little sister. Congratulations," but the tone of her voice was anything but happy. I told her, "Thanks, Kim, I'm sorry. We didn't want to take the spotlight away from your party." And she let out a sarcastic laugh and said, "A little late for that, don't you think?" My parents were standing there saying nothing, and Aunt Evelyn kept chattering about how exciting all this was, completely oblivious to the tense atmosphere that was forming. Kimberly grabbed my arm, not hard but firmly, and said, "Can we talk for a second upstairs?" I looked at Jonathan and he looked worried, but I signaled that I was okay. I thought maybe my sister just wanted to talk to me privately, vent a bit about her party being ruined, which was totally fair. So I went up the stairs behind her. Her apartment has 2 levels, the living room and kitchen downstairs and the bedrooms upstairs. And when we got to the hallway upstairs where the bedrooms were, she closed the guest room door behind us. What happened next was so fast that sometimes I still can't process the sequence of events. Well, Kimberly started yelling at me. Like really yelling at me, saying things like, "Of course, you always have to be the center of attention. And this was my night, my achievement, and you had to ruin it with your stupid pregnancy." I tried to calm her down. I told her, "Kim, I didn't plan this. I didn't want anyone to find out here. It was Aunt Evelyn who," but she interrupted me and said, "You know what? You shouldn't even have kids. You lost 2 babies already. Clearly your body doesn't work for this. You'll probably lose this one too." Those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My own sister had just used my miscarriages, the most painful experiences of my life, as a weapon against me. I felt hot tears in my eyes and said, How can you say something like that? And she continued, oh please, stop playing the victim. You're always the victim. Everything is always about you and your pain and your problems. Well, guess what? Nobody really cares. I was crying by that point and said something like, you're my sister. How can you be so cruel? And she responded, and you're the sister who just ruined my party. I turned around to leave the room. I didn't want to be there for one more second. I just wanted to go downstairs with Jonathan and go home. I opened the door and started walking toward the stairs, wiping my tears with my hand, and I heard Kimberly come out behind me. The next thing I know is that I felt her hands on my back, pushing me hard, and then I was falling. The stairs in her apartment are like 15 or 18 steps. I don't remember exactly, but I know I fell, rolling down several of them before I could grab the railing with my left hand. The pain was instant and horrible. I heard a crack that I now know was my wrist fracturing, and I ended up in an awkward position in the middle of the stairs, my body all twisted, my wrist at an angle that clearly wasn't normal. The first thing I thought, even before registering my own pain, was, the baby. Is the baby okay? And I started screaming for help. Jonathan was the first to get to the stairs. He came running from downstairs, and when he saw me, his face went completely white. People started gathering, everyone shouting and asking what had happened, and the only thing I could say between sobs was, my baby, my baby. Someone needs to check my baby. I looked up the day-fin stairs and Kimberly was standing there, looking at me, and she didn't look sorry or scared or anything. She just looked angry still. Jonathan saw her and then saw me and shouted at her, what the fuck did you do? And she responded, she fell. It's not my fault she's clumsy. I screamed, you pushed me. You pushed me down the stairs. And she shook her head and said, you're crazy. You tripped on your own. My mom and dad also got to the stairs and my mom started panicking, saying, someone call an ambulance while my dad tried to help me sit up, but Jonathan told him not to move me because we didn't know if I had other injuries. The ambulance arrived in like 10 minutes. It felt like hours, and the paramedics checked me right there on the stairs before moving me. My wrist was clearly fractured and I had some bruises already appearing on my arms and legs, but what I cared about most was the baby. The paramedics told me they had to take me to the hospital to check me completely, and Jonathan got in the ambulance with me. Before they closed the doors, I managed to see Kimberly still standing at the top of the stairs. My parents were with her, and I heard my dad say something to her like, what exactly happened? But I didn't hear her response because we were already moving. At the hospital, they did a ton of tests on me, x-rays of my wrist. They put a lead shield over my abdomen to protect the baby, and then they did an ultrasound to check the baby. Those minutes waiting for the ultrasound results were the longest of my life. Jonathan was sitting next to me, holding my good hand, both of us in complete silence, just waiting, praying in my case, although I'm not particularly religious. When the ultrasound doctor put the gel on my belly and started moving the transducer, I was holding my breath. And then we heard the heartbeat, strong and steady, and I saw the baby moving on the screen, and I started crying out of pure relief. The doctor told me the baby seemed to be perfectly fine, that I had been very lucky, that the fall could have ended much worse. She explained that the uterus is very good at protecting the baby, especially at this stage of pregnancy where there's enough amniotic fluid to cushion, but that it was still almost a miracle that there hadn't been complications. My wrist was fractured and needed a cast, and I had bruises all over my body that were going to hurt for a while, but the baby was okay. That was all that mattered. My parents arrived at the hospital like an hour later. They came into the emergency room where I was waiting to get my cast put on, and my mom immediately started asking me how I was and if the baby was okay. I told her the baby was fine, but my wrist was broken. And then my dad, instead of asking how I felt or showing real concern, said to me, Kimberly says you tripped on your own, that she didn't push you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him, Dad, she pushed me. She deliberately put her hands on Perfighter, my back, and pushed me down the stairs. She could have killed me and the baby. My dad shook his head and said, I don't think Kimberly would do something like that. It was surely an accident. Jonathan intervened there and told them, with all due respect, but your daughter just confessed that your other daughter pushed her down the stairs while she was pregnant, and you believe Kimberly instead of her? My mom got defensive and said Kimberly was upset because Heather ruined her party, but I don't think she would do something so horrible intentionally. I screamed. Literally screamed in that emergency room. She told me my body doesn't work for having children. She told me I'd probably lose this baby too, and then she pushed me down the stairs. What else do you need to know? My dad was quiet for a moment and then said something I'll never forget. He said, "Look, Heather, I know you're upset, but you need to think things through carefully before making such serious accusations against your sister. If you report this to the police or cause legal problems, there will be consequences." I asked him, "Are you threatening me?" And he responded, "It's not a threat, it's a fact. If you have your sister arrested or get her into legal trouble, we're going to have to reconsider many things, including your inheritance and your place in this family." My mom said nothing. She was just standing there nodding with everything my dad said. Jonathan stood up and told them to leave us alone. And my dad said, "We're just trying to protect the family." And Jonathan responded, "Protect the family? They almost killed your grandson, and you're worried about protecting the person who did it?" My parents left after that, but before leaving, my mom said to me, "I hope you make the right decision. For everyone's sake." I sat there on that hospital bed with my freshly casted wrist, my bruised body, and I couldn't stop thinking that my own parents were asking me to protect the person who had tried to harm me and my baby. Jonathan and I talked for hours that night about what to do. Part of me was afraid of the consequences, of losing my family completely, of creating this public scandal in our town, but another part of me, the stronger part, knew that what Kimberly had done was wrong, criminally wrong, and that letting her get away with it was basically telling her it was okay to try to kill someone if you were angry enough. Jonathan supported me in whatever decision I made. He told me he would be by my side no matter what. But from his perspective, as my husband and as the father of our baby, he wanted us to press charges because Kimberly had deliberately endangered our lives. We decided to do it. The next day, still from the hospital because they wanted to keep me under observation for a full night, I called the police and filed a formal complaint for assault. I told them the whole story, from the party to the push to the words Kimberly had said to me in the room. 2. Officers came to take my statement. Jonathan also gave his testimony as a witness that he found me on the stairs and heard Kimberly deny responsibility, and there were other people at the party who had seen or heard parts of what happened. The officers told me they were going to investigate and talk to Kimberly. Kimberly was arrested 2 days later. My parents called me furious, yelling at me, how dare I have my own sister arrested, that I was destroying the family, that they would never forgive me for this. My mom was crying, saying people in town were already talking, that it was humiliating for everyone. How was she going to show her face at church now? I told her, your daughter almost killed your grandson, and all you care about is what church people will think. And I hung up. That was the last time I spoke directly with my parents for months. The legal process was long and exhausting. Kimberly pleaded not guilty at first, maintained her story that I had tripped on my own. But there was enough evidence against her, including testimonies from some people at the party who had heard the fight in the room upstairs and had seen her come out behind me toward the stairs. Her own boyfriend, who was at the party, admitted she had been incredibly angry about the pregnancy announcement. In the end, her lawyers advised her to take a deal, and she pleaded guilty to assault in the 3rd degree in exchange for not going to prison. The sentence included 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory anger management therapy, and she had to pay all my medical expenses, which ended up being like $8,000 between the emergency room, the cast, follow-up appointments, and everything else. I also got a restraining order against her, which means she can't come near me or my house, and if she does, she can go to jail. My parents didn't go to any of the hearings, didn't show support toward me at any time, and according to what I heard from other relatives, they paid for the best lawyer they could find for Kimberly to try to minimize the consequences. 5 months passed, in which I didn't hear anything from my parents or Kimberly. My pregnancy continued progressing well, thank God, without further complications. We found out we were having a boy, which filled us with joy, although that happiness was mixed with all the sadness of the family situation. Jonathan's parents were incredible through all this. They became the support system my own parents should have been. They accompanied me to medical appointments when Jonathan had to work. They helped me prepare the baby's room. They organized a small baby shower for me with close friends and family from Jonathan's side. My due date arrived at the end of September, and I had a relatively uncomplicated delivery. Well, as uncomplicated as pushing a 7.5-pound baby out of your body can be. Our son was born healthy, crying loudly, perfect in every way. And when Jonathan held him for the first time and put him on my chest, I cried more than I had cried in months. But these were tears of pure happiness. We named him Noah, and he's the best thing that's ever happened to us. No exaggeration. We were in the hospital for 2 days, the 2 happiest days of my life, honestly. Getting to know our son, learning to feed him and change him and do all those first-time parent things. On the third day, when they were already preparing to discharge us, I received a text message from my mom that said, "We heard you had the baby. Congratulations. We want to meet him." I didn't respond. Like an hour later, we arrived at our house with Noah. Jonathan was carrying the car seat and I was carrying the diaper bag. Both of us exhausted but excited to start our life as a family of 3. And when we got to our house entrance, there were my parents, standing on the porch. Jonathan immediately tensed up, put the car seat behind him in protective mode, and my dad raised his hands in a peace sign and said, "We just want to see our grandson." My mom had red eyes like she'd been crying and said, "Please, Heather, he's our grandson. We have a right to meet him." I stayed quiet because honestly, I didn't know what to say. I had rehearsed this moment in my head many times, but now that it was happening, my mind was blank. But Jonathan didn't have that problem. Jonathan told them, "With all due respect, but you have no rights. You had months to decide which side you were on, and you chose the side of the person who almost killed your grandson before he was born. You threatened Heather with disinheriting her if she pressed charges against the person who pushed her down the stairs while she was pregnant. So no, you're not going to meet Noah. Not today, not tomorrow, probably never." My dad turned red with anger and said, "You can't keep us away from our grandson. He's our family." And Jonathan responded, "Notice how when it was convenient for you, Heather wasn't family. But now that there's a cute baby, suddenly we're all family again." My mom looked directly at me and tried to appeal to me, saying, "Heather, please, I know we made mistakes, but we're your parents. That's our grandson. Don't do this to us." And I finally found my voice and told her, "You made me choose between pressing charges against the person who attacked me or keeping my place in the family. When I needed you to protect me, you protected my attacker. When I needed you to believe me, you believed her. You're not going to be in my son's life because I don't trust that you'll protect him if he ever needs you to. If you couldn't protect me, you're not going to protect him." We went into the house and closed the door, leaving them outside. We heard them ring the doorbell several times, then knock on the door. My mom was crying on the other side, saying, "Please, just a few minutes." But we didn't open. Eventually, they left. Jonathan asked me if I was okay, and honestly, I wasn't. I was shaking and crying, but I also knew we had done the right thing. That same afternoon, Jonathan called our lawyer and started the process to get another restraining order, this time against my parents, so they can't show up at our house unannounced like that. It's been 2 weeks since that. Noah is growing well. He's a beautiful and calm baby who sleeps pretty decently for a newborn. I'm probably jinxing it by saying this, and tonight he won't sleep at all. But whatever. Jonathan and I are exhausted but happy. We're discovering this new life as parents together. My in-laws come every other day to help and spend time with their grandson, which is beautiful to see. We have a house full of love. Even if it's a smaller family than I once thought it would be, there are still moments when it hurts. Of course. There are moments when I look at Noah and think, my mom should be here helping me figure out if that cry is from hunger or sleepiness. Or, my dad should be here holding him and bragging about his first grandson. But then I remember that those same people chose to defend someone who literally pushed me down the stairs, and the pain mixes with something else, with deep disappointment maybe, or with acceptance that the family I thought I had actually never existed. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe someday my parents will understand what they did wrong. Maybe someday there will be some kind of reconciliation. Although honestly, I can't imagine what that would look like. Kimberly is still on probation, doing her community service hours and going to therapy. Or at least, that's what I understand. I haven't heard from her directly since before the trial, and I hope I never have to hear from her again. The restraining order is still in effect, and it's going to stay in effect for a long time if it's up to me. What I do know is that I have an incredible husband who supported me in the darkest moments, who defended me when not even my own family did, and who is now a wonderful father to our son. I have a beautiful and healthy baby who is the result of 2 years of trying and losing and trying again, and who is basically a walking miracle considering everything we went through. And I have the certainty that I made the right decisions, even when they were the hardest decisions, because at the end of the day, my job is to protect my son. And that starts with not allowing toxic people, no matter if they're family, to have access to him. Last week, Noah grabbed my finger for the first time while I was feeding him. He closed his little hand around my index finger and looked at me with those big dark eyes, and I felt like everything I'd been through was worth it just for that moment. Jonathan was there and took a picture of it, and now it's my favorite picture in the whole world. My son holding my finger, trusting me completely to care for and protect him. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. No matter what, even if it means keeping half of my biological family away. Because in the end, family isn't just blood. It's the people who are there when things get tough, and it turns out my real family is smaller than I thought but infinitely stronger.